All right, let's do this. As always, we're always a minute late.
There we go.
It never fails. Okay, hold on with me. All right. Okay, so it looks like we're live. Having to make sure because our technical difficulties and all this other good stuff is always a fun thing. So let's double check real quick, and if we are, we'll go ahead and get started.
Go.
Oh, I would like to say we are, but it's not showing up on the page.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't see it.
Let's see. Scheduled preview. Da 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 da.
Oh, here. I think we're on.
Are we live?
Yeah.
I'm like, please, somebody say something to me. Because for whatever reason, it's not showing up for me at all. I mean, we've got people in the chat and all kinds of stuff. So it's just one of those Untitled Nerd Network technical issues that we always seem to be running into. So I'm going to, if everybody will give me just a second to hop over here and do our thing. I'm going to try our best to be running into. So now I'm getting, everybody will give me just, there we go. Okay. Okay, looks like we are on here. Hello, everybody. I'm Lonnie with Untitled Nerd Network, brought to you by both Infinity Flux and your local Satanist out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it's interesting because I'm here. Your name is Matthew Loisel, right?
Right.
I want to be sure I got the last name correct.
You did.
So, anyway, like our two sponsors are Infinity Flux, a comic book store, and your local Satanist, a vegan eatery. And so what we have, you actually have are the creator behind a vegan comic book. So the title of this book is Murder, and I did a really brief review on it. What was it? Maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. So I want to talk to you about this book. I want to talk to you about your background. I just want to pick and see all the stuff I can about you. So let me know, if I may, your background. What made you decide to do this book?
Sure. So, we've been working on this book, my wife Brittany and I, for probably about a year, and before that, we were actually, we had our day jobs, but we actually ran a small veganic farm. And we were 2 acres. We grew vegetables veganically, which basically is growing food without any animal inputs. And we were the first and only certified veganic farm in California. And as part of that, we sold directly to our customers through bags. We would drop off bags of produce up in the San Francisco area. And as part of that, we wanted to let our customers get to know us a little bit better. And so we had the idea of making a comic book that featured all of the people who worked on our farm. And so we all had different superpowers, and we actually handed the farm off to our friend and employee before it ever, we ever actually made the comic book. But in kind of brainstorming and talking about the comic book, we started to have this idea of a a vegan superhero who would be like a animal rights activist, um, but would also, have some kind of superpower or something like that. And so that was kind of the germ of the idea for the Butcher's Butcher, who makes his debut in issue 1.
Oh yeah.
And so we had kind of kicked around the idea of, well, what if animals started to link telepathically, and that was kind of where it all started.
So the beginning of this book, you basically like I kind of want to show some stuff. I don't want to give the ending away, obviously, but at the very beginning of this book, I mean, you just come out of the gate swinging right at the very beginning, and you have basically this guy who I'm assuming is like one of the corporate guys, the CEO, something like that, of a like a factory farm, and this guy shows up in the office and with this like bull behind him, and the bull just rampages through the office and kills the dude, puts a horn right through his chest, and for basically, I'll see if I can get that on the camera there. Um, yeah.
That's maybe my favorite panel.
So everything comes together in the way that all of these animals are kind of talking to each other and able to talk. There's this one dude who can understand them, and but I'll say like, oh God, we've talked about it before, and I talked to Richard Starkings in an interview. He's actually vegetarian, I know, and he said, we were talking about the old saying that if slaughterhouses had, glass walls, that everybody would be vegetarian to an extent. And this book really does a job of letting you see some of the really, what's the word, unpleasant facts of what goes on inside some of these like dairy farms and things of that nature. Like really the scene that got me, and I will say, like, if you have a kind of a weak stomach, if you're cringy, that kind of thing, this probably isn't going to be for you. But there is actually a scene where, and I didn't even know that this was a thing until this book, and then I researched it and found out, oh crap, that's true. Where they have all of these like little like baby chicks and on a conveyor belt, and like they're extras, and they just get dropped off into this grinder live. Sure. And I'm like, I read that, I was like, all right. So I was like, I think I'm gonna have to Google that. And I did, and I was not really happy with what I found. So sure. Is this stuff that you knew of to begin with, or did you do some research for this book going in?
Yeah, we like to say in the back pages, the Wanna Beef back pages, we got the hashtag, murder is a documentary, and yeah, there was like for example, so what you're talking about is they call it the culling of male hatchery chicks. And just to explain it, basically, to lay eggs, we just want the female chicks because the male chicks won't produce eggs. So, we need a tiny percentage of males to reproduce with a huge number of females. So we basically kill all of the male chicks. And that, before starting this, I knew about. there's a lot of research that I've had to do. Like for example, for issue 2, we go more into dairy farming, and so dairy farming and free range chickens are the 2 topics that we're going to kind of weave into the story in issue 2. So that I've had to do some research into, but like the culling of the male chicks, I had already known about.
That was now reading that. It gives you another perspective because this guy, he's actually, as the story's progressing and these, the chickens are running around and everything, you actually get to basically read what they're thinking, read what they're saying, communicating to each other, and then they communicate to him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might actually be, let me see, there was one panel I was looking at right before we started the interview.
Mm.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was the first time in my life I had ever heard a baby chicken drop an F-bomb. Yeah, pretty much. And I'll see if I can bring that up. Everybody have to excuse my cough today. I'm still under the weather, but I want to do this interview. Basically, right there with my finger, right here, the chicken's looking up at him and says something to the extent of, fuck, you're tall.
People like that one.
So I'm like, yeah, whoo. Like, that was unexpected. Like, I had to kind of go back and make sure. I was like, what? Did he really just say that? But yeah, I mean, I like it's realistic. The little baby chick kind of has an attitude I pick up just from that page. Where the guy asks him, can you walk on your own? And he's like, well, duh.
Right.
And I'm like, it's probably accurate, if anything. If chickens could talk, I'm sure that's probably what they would say. I will say, if anybody in the chat, if anybody's watching live anyway, we can't go back in time and do this. If anybody's in the chat has any questions or anything, feel free to post comments, ask questions, stuff like that. I mean, we'll even take the hard questions. It doesn't have to be an easy one. Welcome, dude. Yeah, we actually have Elijah in here, one of our people that used to watch us on YouTube all the time. And Amber is in here, Brian, Noah. We got a couple of the 2 Corys, Gordon. We got a lot of people in here. Lots of people watching. Oh, by the way, thanks for the. I've seen you and your group did quite a bit of advertising for this, so much appreciated.
Oh yeah.
So I want to know, going forward, we talked before just a little bit. You've actually got the next book in the works, but we're not quite to the printing presses yet.
Right.
So what are we looking at? Where are you at? When can we expect to see number 2? Are you going to do a Kickstarter or anything?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to do a Kickstarter. You talked about the first 5 pages of issue 1 kind of being a punch in the face, and it's partly designed that way because we were trying to get a publisher to pick us up, and so we kind of wanted to make a bit of a statement in the first 5 pages, send that to the publishers, and nobody would have us. So we're going to kickstart.
That really that dumbfounds me in a way, because like I can understand like Marvel and DC not wanting to get mixed up in that, but sure, this kind of book seems right up Image's alley.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying. We were really trying to tailor it. That if Image would have, even talked to us, that would have been amazing. But it's our first book, and I understand. So anyway, thus the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So I think I want to get the script finished before I start another Kickstarter. Um, so probably in hopefully in December we'll get a Kickstarter going for issue 2.
Okay.
If not, after the new year.
Awesome. Like I'm really looking forward to that, because that's the only thing I don't like about like indie books that don't have a set monthly schedule. Is I read that and I'm like, okay, when can I read number 2? And like we got to wait on the Kickstarter and all that stuff to get going. But at the same time, I can pretty much guarantee you that we're going to be uh, supporting number 2. Like I've got to have number 2, most definitely. So I'm assuming the first Kickstarter was a success.
Yeah, it was. It was a success. We actually did 2 Kickstarters. This is all new to us. Kickstarters are a trip, because you really got to balance the cost of the rewards to what you're getting, and then factoring in postage. So I suppose we made money on the first Kickstarter, but there were some couple of rewards that just like totally miscalculated, and so we paid out of pocket for quite a bit, but I think this next Kickstarter will have pretty well dialed in.
Yeah. So now that you've kind of gotten an idea and have gone through it at one time, then we're kind of at a better place where you know how much everything costs. And that's right. The thing. Like I'm really happy that you guys, because I went back and looked at the Kickstarter, what you can get for what price and everything. And I actually did a poster like this on my personal Facebook page just a few days ago, where I love it when creators offer something tangible for a Kickstarter. It's like, you offer, a lot of times, you go in, usually it's a base $20 or $30. You can get a physical copy of the book. A lot of times it's signed, that kind of thing. That's good. What I don't like, what I can't wrap my head around, I understand people have to make money, but at the same time, like you said, you have to weigh the money making versus what the consumer gets. And right. You have some people that will like let's say they'll create a 20-25 page comic, and they're like, okay, if you give us $100, we'll give you a digital copy.
Right.
And I'm like,
can you do that? Is that something I could have done?
Yeah, you could. I'm not saying that it would be successful.
Sure.
But that's something. It was like, I think the Kickstarter that I was thinking about specifically, it was like it was a short, independent, like 15-20 minute film they were making. And you had to donate at least $100 to even get a digital copy of the movie.
Wow.
And I'm like, if you can't keep it in the $20 to $30 range, you're pricing people out of it, because people want to see that product. Now, a lot of times, even if it's a digital comic, if it's a good product, I can understand spending $20, $30 on it. Granted, sure. I like having a paper copy a lot more, but sure. If it's a good product, keep it comparable to the mass market. It right. doesn't have to be right there with it, but if you can keep it within 50%, we're good. And I don't know. I don't know if these people have like a really devoted fan base that I'm missing out on, or
maybe
what. But I've always, if you want to bring in new customers, like I said, it's good, like you're doing, to have it approachable at least. So what other kind of projects, like, is this your only creative endeavor, or do you have other things that you work on from time to time?
Yeah, well, I think when we started writing comics, we maybe initially spread ourselves really thin, and now have kind of focused in. My wife Brittany also writes. She's working hard in the kitchen right now while we screw around. Uh, but she has her own project called Karma, and that's kind of more of a we like to call it like the female Punisher.
Oh
Kind of
wow.
like a very violent Me Too uh, kind of vibe to it. So she's working on a script on that, and there'll probably be a Kickstarter on that. We also, and I think actually Demi is on in the chat room if she hasn't left. But we have another project with a local artist called Tweens, and I'm also working on the script for that. That's about these two foster children. It's kind of a sci-fi story where they get sucked into a alternate dimension called the Tween, and have to it's kind of a coming of age kind of story. So that one, yeah, there she is.
Oh yeah.
So I'm working on that script also. I also just finished a script for a publisher. It's actually our first paid gig. It's a publisher called Paranoid American.
Okay.
And they do kind of like these conspiracy comic books. They kind of take conspiracy theories and kind of lay it out in the form of a comic book. And so they did one, probably my favorite one that they've done. They have a anthology series called the Paranoid American History series. They did one, I don't know if you had heard the theory that you've heard of the Lindbergh baby.
No. Well, if you explain it to me, I bet I'll be like, oh yeah.
So Charles Lindbergh, what was he? He was the aviation aviation titan, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, I believe he was the one that like flew from one coast to the other, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And
don't quote me on it, please.
Me neither. I didn't write it. His baby was kidnapped and ransomed, and later turned up dead. The conspiracy theory is that he actually coordinated that kidnapping. Oh. And he was actually a famous eugenicist. And so the theory was that there was actually some kind of disability that the child had. And so he coordinated the elimination of his disabled baby.
Oh, wow. And
in comic book format, it's really kind of it just really sucks you in, And so the publisher and editor Thomas reached out to us because he saw our work in Murder, and he liked how we were, kind of using the medium to get a message across in an entertaining way. And so he asked us to pitch a couple ideas to him. Brittany and I love conspiracy theories. It's not necessarily about believing them, but just it's fascinating that all these ideas are out there.
Oh yeah, they're entertaining as all get out.
Right. So we pitched a couple to him, and we ended up writing one on the connection between the CIA and crack being introduced into Los Angeles.
Wow.
And that was really fun.
I can already see where that's going, and it does sound very fascinating. We do have a question in the chat from Troy Bowen. Bowen, I'm horrible with names. Have you ever experienced writer's block, and how do you deal with it if you do?
Oh yeah, you can ask Demi about that. So actually, you know, I had thought that we would have the script to the first issue of Tweens finished already, and you know, we have all the characters, we have kind of the overall theme and what we want to say with it, and I had written about, and Demi can tell you, I think about 9 pages of script, and just kind of hit a wall, and you know, kind of knew how I knew where we wanted to go, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to get that arc that would, you know, keep building and then, you know, kind of resolve at the end of, you know, it's going to be 22 pages, resolve at the end. So I kind of had to step back from it and have been working on the issue 2 of Murder. So I guess my advice to you, Troy, is I gave up, is what I did. But I'm gonna come back to it. One thing that I did do was I've been playing with. Do you start with the panels, or do you start with the dialogue? And so when I wrote issue 1 of Murder, I really kind of started with the layout and the panels and the transitions, and then went back and added the dialogue. I did that with Tweens also, and kind of hit that wall. And so when I switched over to writing the script for issue 2 of Murder, I've only written the dialogue. I haven't written any of the paneling. I haven't done any of the layouts, and it's just kind of. I mean, I've almost been writing a page a day.
Troy says giving up is half the battle.
Attaboy. Yeah.
I have wondered, is there like, and that's one of those questions that I should have asked other people who have written in comics. Is there like an accepted form or like an accepted order in which you write, or is it just every man for himself, however you want to do it? Like
it seems like every writer's different. From the interviews that I've watched and the people that I've talked to, I want to say that, you know, starting with a really broad, you know, okay, so this is the scene and this is kind of what has to happen, and then, you know, figuring out, okay, you know, this scene plays out on this page and this scene plays out on this page, and then going back and adding dialogue. I understand that as being called the Marvel method.
Okay.
That's what they used to do, especially in like the 60s and 70s. I just personally as a writer, I struggle most with dialogue. You know, it's just something that I you know, I know that I gotta work on, and I try to focus on making the dialogue seem natural and believable. And so kind of leaning into that and writing Murder issue 2 dialogue first has helped quite a bit.
Demi actually says, as far as artist block, I just jump from one project to another.
Oh, see? Yeah, that's basically what I did.
And that is true. I'm yeah, I mean, now do you read any comics? Like, are you a comic fan?
Yes, yeah.
What does the Matthew Pull box look like?
You know, it's funny you should say that. So, you know, it's Wednesday. It's
Yep.
a beautiful day, new comic book day. So today, the only book that I have pulled for me, Batman by Tom King, is one of my favorite writers. That's working right now. But I actually found in an old. So this is, you know, I'm a nerd, and so I like to make lists. So this is my pool list from basically a year ago. This is
Wow.
this is see right there. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is, you see how many comic books I was pooling?
That's like every week.
Yeah, this is every week we got new comic books.
Yeah, you're looking at probably half a dozen or more a week.
Uh-huh. All these cost money.
Yeah.
So this week, this is it. One comic book. So now that we're rolling with murder, and you know, we gotta be smart with our money.
Now, are you reading any Marvel, any X-Men, Avengers, anything like that right now?
Uh, I don't think I'm reading any Marvel right now.
Do you read The Walking Dead by chance?
I don't, and the reason why is because you know, I I started reading comic books in earnest in my adulthood. Actually, while we were still farming, so maybe 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, before that, I was we were farming, we were really busy, and I actually was incredibly stressed out by the farm, and so I needed some kind of escape, and that's why I started reading comic books again. And actually, the one that I got into and really got into was the Mighty Thor, when Aaron was writing it, Jason Aaron.
Are you
Uh,
talking about the one where Jane Foster was Thor?
yeah,
Okay, I've been meaning to read that. I just haven't gotten around to it.
I love that. Just sucked me in. I mean, I was, you know, that's when my pool list exploded. I absolutely loved that series. I have the whole series up until pretty recently. Um, but what was the question?
Just what's your pull box look like? Now,
Oh,
I do like I love talking comic books with people.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's the like if we're not talking about your comic, I want to talk about some other comics.
Oh,
you know, um, if you have, I'm sure you have like everybody has that first comic book. You know, their favorite comic. If there was a comic book that like you had all the comic books in that you've ever read, and you could pick one comic book out of there to give to somebody to make them a fan,
uh-huh.
what would that book be?
That would be The Vision by Tom King.
Dang. Okay, you just pulled that one out real quick.
Yeah, well, it's, I don't know. I just that
We all have a book like that though. That's
yeah.
what I'm getting at.
What's yours?
Ultimate X-Men number 41.
See, there you go. See, we get it's
Yep. I'm not going to fault you at all there because yeah, I definitely do. Because that was a book. Did you ever read Ultimate X-Men by
no,
chance?
no.
This was a book where this kid wakes up one morning, just in a nutshell. He wakes up one morning, his parents are gone. He goes outside, nobody's around. And he gets to school, and his girlfriend runs up to him, and she just melts in front of him.
Uh,
And come to find out, he has become a mutant overnight, and he's developed this uncontrollable power that basically decays carbon based life forms.
oh shit! So
It,
he
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 can't control it. If anybody gets around him, he emits this pheromone that just dissolves them. And
wow.
so he goes off by himself, hides in a cave, and the X-Men send Wolverine there to sit down, talk to the kid, and kill him because they can't afford for that to get out that a mutant did that.
Did he kill him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like the last panel is like the cave entrance, and Wolverine just steps out and looks around and walks off. Like it is an amazing book. Like it's one of the few books in like all of comics that has actually made me cry from reading it, because he actually brings like a 6-pack of beer, sits down with the kid and hands him a beer and is like, hey, this is what happened. And like once the kid realizes how many people has died because of him, like he's ready for Wolverine to do it. Like, he was like, I know why you're here, just do it. And
That's
like,
all in one issue?
yes.
Okay. Comic books.
One little 20-page issue. And in my opinion, it's one of the best written books in creation.
Wow.
But that's one of those books that I actually have a couple of copies of in my collection, to where if anybody's like, I've never read a comic book before, I'm like, here you go, it's yours.
Wow.
Like, because you could find it in most dollar bins if they have a pretty good Ultimate X-Men selection. So anytime I find an extra copy, I pick it up, and just like, hey, this is what I'm going to pass out.
Yeah. Well, I guess suppose maybe it's just my personal experience, but I feel like you share this experience too. There are emotions that I feel reading comic books that no other medium gives me. Another one, did you read, it was Brian Michael Bendis wrote The Infamous Iron Man. It was maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was where the Axis thing happened and Stark became like a villain.
Well, he was in a coma.
It was like his brother or something, wasn't it?
It was Doom.
Okay, see, I know of the series. But I've never. That was right around where I only read like 3 titles at the time. And I think it was like X-Men. They were all X-Men titles. So
there's a scene in that. It's a maybe 12-issue miniseries, and he his mom was a witch, right? And not to spoil it for anybody, but she comes back. He thinks that she's dead, and he comes back, and there's a flashback scene to when Victor was a little boy, and she wants him to sacrifice a rabbit as some part of a ritual.
Oh, wow.
And basically he refuses to do it, and she shames him. And I don't know if it's the vegan, I'm a vegan softie or whatever.
Yeah, your sensibilities.
Right. But the way that scene played out, it's just a gut punch. And I don't think that if it was a movie or if it was even a cartoon, it would have the same impact. Have you read anything by Scott McCloud?
I don't think so.
So he's an artist, but he's written 2 books. One is Understanding Comics, and one is Making Comics. Mm-hmm. I don't have it. I should have had it handy. But he talks about how just how comic books work. I actually have this. He has a list of transitions, and I don't have it handy. I should have it here.
This seems like something that I could probably really get into, because I fancy myself a writer, but when it comes to comics, I couldn't write a comic worth a flip.
I bet you could, really, because I feel like you understand comics well. But he goes into the different transitions. There's from panel to panel, it can be from one moment to one moment, or it can be from an action to an action, or a scene to a scene. And he talks about how, the human brain, depending on what that transition is, the human brain fills in. And that's what kind of makes comics a unique experience, because when I see a transition from one panel to one panel, my brain is going to fill one thing in.
Yeah.
When you see that transition, your brain will fill something else in. And, that's not what happens in movies. In a movie, it's just a continuous,
Oh, yeah. It's pretty well explained.
Right. And
they hold your hand, basically.
Right. And so I think that's a really unique part of reading comic books, and why I think it's such a special medium,
Well, one of the interesting, did you ever read any of Superior Spider-Man?
No,
It was basically Dr. Octopus, his mind in Peter Parker's body. He's taken over. He's the Superior Spider-Man. And there was a part in one of the last books where he's fighting Green Goblin, and Peter has finally taken over. And, you can't see Norman Osborn's face inside the Goblin mask. And Parker shows up, full Spider-Man outfit, bouncing around everywhere. And he's like, oh, Octavius, I ain't got time to fool with you. And Peter says, no, it's Parker this time. And he's like, no, I don't believe it. I refuse. Parker's gone. You're Octavius now. And he was like, yeah, but, it basically says something about him having a man purse. Because, Green Goblin has that little satchel that he carries around. And it shows Goblin's face. And he's like, it is you. And, only a comic book could, show that interaction.
Right.
Because it wouldn't have worked in a movie. It sure wouldn't have worked in just a regular printed book. It had to happen in a comic book for that interaction to really pay off.
Mm-hmm.
Because they show Goblin's face, and maybe it's just the still picture just did it. And it was the payoff. It's almost like you've been waiting 30 issues for that, and it worked. Oh, and I want to ask your thoughts on the passing of Stan Lee. We're barely a week removed from that.
Well, yeah. I didn't. Yeah, I thought that obviously very sad. A huge part of the comic book community. I had thought that because we were going to do this talk last week.
Yeah.
And so I for sure thought we'd talk about it, and then we pushed it back, and then Bill Maher has to insert himself. The meme that comes to mind with him is, I don't know if you've seen that Simpsons meme. It's a newspaper, and it's I think it's Grandpa Simpson.
It's like old man gets mad yelling at kids or something.
Shakes fist at cloud.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I'm going to go ahead and say, I've always been a really big Bill Maher fan through the years. I mean, I have been for 15 years, but he's made a career of pissing people off. I mean, that's what he does. He is, like I said, we don't really talk politics or anything, but I personally have been a fan of Bill Maher. Most of the people that he pisses off aren't people that I like.
Right.
So when he did this, I just kind of looked and I'm like, I'm probably still going to buy his next book, but I'm mad at you now, Bill.
Sure.
I don't, it just so happened that the fandom that I enjoy is in his crosshairs. I mean, that was really completely unnecessary. He insulted a whole pile of intelligent people because I'm sorry, but his thoughts are what a lot of people truly think. Bill Maher's not alone in this. There's a lot of people out there that look at these Marvel movies and say, oh, they're not real movies. Or they look at these comic books and think, oh, they're not real literature. There's a lot of people out there who think that. It's not just him. I mean, there's a big group, and I don't agree with that. I think what some people have said in the past is that comic books are our era's mythology.
Oh yeah.
When they dig up cities, 3,000 years from now, they're going to look at these comic books, these works by Stan Lee, these works by, Brian Michael Bendis, these people, and they're going to see, oh, this is amazing. And I mean, it is. It's there's no way that this stuff is not real literature. I mean,
right.
Because I've read a lot of stuff. I've read the classics. I've read Stephen King. I've read hundreds of books, like novels, and comic books are right up there. And I mean, as well as I do, like they're work, they're art. There's no way you could say otherwise.
Well, and we've just talked about how special comic books as a medium are. So we've already addressed what lazy argument he was going to make. Maybe it's I shouldn't bring him up in a conversation about Stan Lee because he has some controversial views on Stan Lee, but
go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say Alan Moore.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not literature, then I don't know what is. From Hell, From Hell is. Have you read From Hell?
No.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man! I mean, it's first of all, it's that thick, and the arc, it's just such a grand arc. This story, I would highly recommend you read From Hell.
I'll say Alan Moore. We were talking about him a few days ago. He's one of those guys who he's such a detailed writer. Mm-hmm. So detailed. You wouldn't think that somebody who wrote comic. I mean, that's me being stereotypical. But you wouldn't think that looking at a comic book that there's that much attention to detail. But look at Watchmen. Even.
Oh yeah.
All the little Easter eggs and details, and they say that as an artist, he is one of the hardest writers to do art for because he will give you pages of script for just one panel.
Oh, how interesting! I did not know that.
Yeah.
He is my favorite writer for sure. He is. I think he's the best comic book writer of all time. I actually have here, it's probably my favorite book on writing comic books, Alan Moore's writing.
Oh my God, I need to read that. Is that like available on Amazon or anything?
I think I got it on Amazon. It's like $6, and it's basically, he goes into some specific, storytelling techniques and stuff like that, but he's kind of just waxing philosophic. And
yeah,
it is, I mean, it shapes the way that, like, this book is why murder turned out how murder turned out.
Is that anything like How Own Writing Was by Stephen King?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I haven't read.
Okay, well, Own Writing was like, the first half of it was autobiographical. The second half was Stephen King just being like, hey, here's how you write a novel. This is the right way to do it. Here's some pointers. And like the first 2 pages of the how-to part basically completely drained any motivation I had because he was like, to begin with, he was like, not everybody is a great writer. You know, some people suck at it, like something along those lines. And he's like, if you don't do this, 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 and this, you might as well not even, you know, dream of grandeur, you know, and the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm just like, okay, I quit. But
No.
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I have something like 4 or 5 self-published books, but I've always writing comic books has always fascinated me. It really has, and it's just something that I've never gotten around to. And whenever I talk to somebody like yourself who has made it happen, it just it does. It fascinates me, and I love hearing about it.
Yeah, no, I would say Alan Moore's book, did quite the opposite for me. For one, he said, and I do agree with this. Basically, like probably 80% of comic books suck, right? And he blames the publishers. He blames the kind of wanting to reach the broadest audience and kind of appeal to the lowest common denominator. And he basically said, um, write what you think is a good comic book. Write a comic book that you would read,
Yeah,
that would inspire you. And so, writing Murder, writing Paranoid American, I just try to look at, Tom King, Alan Moore, Mark Miller, Jonathan Hickman, the comic book writers that I think are, the best. I'm just kind of try to emulate what they do that makes me feel something.
it's funny because you're talking about Alan Moore, and he is Alan Moore is like a godsend. He's one of the all-time legends of comic book writing. But if you look at some of the stuff that he's done lately, as far as like like press appearances and things, he is the portrait of the old man shaking his fist at the cloud, because
Sure.
I've never seen somebody just as with as much venom and toxicity towards modern day comic writing. Like seriously, I can't remember the last time I saw Alan Moore in the headlines where he wasn't like yelling at modern day comics. It's hilarious, but he's earned that right because
Sure.
he made comics what they are today, and
Right.
it was the big companies that took that and kind of made a bastardized version of what he created, because he did a lot of the stuff like like Watchmen, a bunch of the Batman stories that really took that dark adult tone.
Hmm.
And then companies like Marvel and DC and even Image to an extent took those concepts and were like, hey, we're just gonna whore this out and just make money off of it. And there was I believe it was a quote in one of my I collect old Wizard magazines. I love the nostalgia that comes with those things. And I think it was Chris Claremont who said one of the biggest issues he had with Marvel was that he was writing comics and Marvel wanted Wolverine and like X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, guest appearance in X Factor, his own ongoing series. Let's put him over in the Defenders. And he was like, Wolverine's supposed to be a loner. Why is he in like 17 books this month? And they're like,
Sure.
oh, we gotta put Wolverine out there. He's selling. If a book's doing bad, we gotta put Wolverine in it. Bump those numbers up. And he was like, well, it goes against the character. And he's like, but the fans want Wolverine,
Right.
and if they want Wolverine, we're gonna cram him down their throats till they pop. And he said that was one of the things that really made him leave X-Men in the early '90s.
Oh, interesting.
Was they were trying to make money at the expense of quality, and that seems very anti-Alan Moorish.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's crazy how and we're kind of seeing that again, I think, in the industry. But God, like we could sit here and just talk about this stuff all night.
Oh, I know.
Like seriously,
And
I agree with Brooke here. She says in the chat, I don't have a copy of Catcher in the Rye framed on my wall, but I sure as hell have comics framed, and that's true. I do too.
sure.
I have. What do I have? Well, I have a very almost unhealthy obsession with Jubilee.
Okay.
And I actually have Generation X, I think number 4. It was the Jim Lee trading card variant, and I have that. That's the only framed comic I actually have on my wall.
Jubilee,
yes.
favorite X-Men of my mom, who's actually watching us now. Hi, Mom.
Really? I'm not the only person in the world whose favorite character is Jubilee?
Absolutely not. And then also,
wow.
quick shout out to Andy. Andy, I have your From Hell. So I owe you that.
Like their copy.
It's actually Andy's my buddy from way back.
That's pretty funny.
And then also Emiliano's on. We got to do a call with Emiliano.
Such a mannish voice, this Matt. It's funny because you can actually tell, I think, by listening to each of us speak where we're from.
Oh, yeah.
I would pick that you're from somewhere in California. Me, you're like, oh, you're from one of them southern states.
Are you from Chattanooga?
Listen to this. Born in Alabama, raised in Georgia, live in Tennessee.
Oh, wow. So do I have to pick which of those states your accent is? Is there a distinction?
I think it's called like a la Georgia Sea or something like that. It's a healthy mix of the tri-state region. God help me. I said he's glad you read it. You've been all the way through it, I'm assuming, from hell.
Absolutely, and it's funny that you mentioned that Alan Moore is such a thorough researcher. One, he talks about that in writing comics, that you need to research like a madman. But also in the back, the only comic book that I've ever read that has an appendix in the back that cites all of his research and explains all of his theories. It's about Jack the Ripper, and I don't want to spoil it for you because it's really brilliant. But
the movie with Johnny Depp, right?
Oh yeah, have you seen that? I haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen the movie either. But I'm wondering, is the movie based off of Jack the Ripper, or is the movie based off of that graphic novel?
I believe it's based off the graphic novel. We can defer to Andy. I bet you Andy knows the answer to that. But I actually don't know.
We need to know, Andy.
Come on, Andy.
Be our encyclopedia. Be our fact check.
Yeah. So he has a big old appendix with all of his research and explaining why he has this person as the suspect, and it's.
I bet that would be almost as interesting as the story itself, because it's like in the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, or not the Two Towers, Return of the King. Like the second half of that book is like, the appendix and the maps and the timelines, and I like reading that stuff. Like anytime somebody puts out a book of just general info, I'm like, let's get this. Like George R.R. Martin did the World of Ice and Fire, which was like the hardcover of just history of the Westeros. And I sat down and read that thing, 4 times over. Replying to Ant, let's see.
Oh, there you go, Andy.
Okay, the graphic novel, but he said it's awful, the movie. Wow.
Yeah, and going back to you know, just how much focus, Andy. Come on, Andy. The question was, is the movie From Hell based off of Alan Moore's graphic novel? Which I think it is based off of the graphic novel.
It would be a heck of a coincidence to be called the same thing.
Right. But it's interesting that the movie's awful. Yeah, so it is. It is.
Huh.
It, I love The Watchmen. I love Edda. I love From Hell, and I have started Watchmen, and I have started V for Vendetta, and I just can't. I stop watching it for 10, 15 minutes.
Like the movies, you mean?
The movies, yeah.
No, let me tell you this, man. I'm going to go on record as saying Watchmen, the director's cut of Watchmen,
Okay.
is one of my top 5 favorite films ever.
Okay.
But I can't make it more than 20 pages into the freaking book.
No way.
Swear. I don't know why. I watched the movie first. I've seen the movie at least a dozen times in various formats: Blu-ray, DVD, director's cut, theatrical cut, on TV, and I don't even think I've made it past the first issue.
Wow.
I seriously, I don't know why. I really don't. I want to read it. I do. I want to read it so bad. But something, I don't know. Maybe I like the crisp, clean look of the movie, and when I get on and look at the book, it's got the old, 1960s look to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I have no answers for you. I really don't. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever read any of Alan Moore's work all the way through.
Oh, really?
Despite him I'll acknowledge that he is comic book royalty, but I don't think I've ever read any of his work from start to finish.
He's got another great one is his work in Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I've heard many a good thing about that.
Sensational. Oh yeah, look at Andy's triggered.
Oh, of course. You can't say what I just said in comic book circles and somebody not get pissed off. No. Oh, you're talking about he's saying that the movie only covers like 10% of the graphic novel.
Right, of From Hell. Yeah.
Now I do want to say we actually have hit an hour now. But I want to kind of go back to your book real quick before we wrap.
Sure.
This is very interesting. This is probably something that people don't know because it's easier not to know the facts.
Mm-hmm.
At the back of your book, on here, 32 million cows are raised in the United States every year. Over 9 billion U.S. chicks are born annually, and more than 80% of those are raised in factory farms. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that's something that you pulled from some research.
Right, and that's actually the USDA that I got those from. And I don't. This may be this might be an Instagram statistic. This might have been something that I saw on Instagram, but I want to say that if we killed animals at the rate that, or if we killed humans at the rate that we kill animals, we would wipe humans off the face of the earth in 10 days. I want to say.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So, something to that extent. So that was a big part of researching murder, and probably one of the most surprising things to me was just the scale. Even as a vegan, I didn't really realize, just how many individual animals are, born and die.
Yeah, seeing I'm telling you, man, the scene with the chicks being on the conveyor belt, that stuck with me. That really did. Like the coloring, the darkness of it, the just everything. Like that. This is something. This is one of those books that I would recommend to somebody who doesn't understand why I eat the way I eat.
Sure.
And this is one of those books that you can hand to somebody. It's not preachy, but it sure as hell gets the point across. And
I think it's for obvious reasons been branded a vegan comic book, but I really wrote it. It's not written for vegans. It's really written for people who love comic books. I wanted to make a good comic book above all, um, but it's preaching at people will do nothing, in my opinion.
yeah,
And so I thought of this as an interesting way to show people something that's real. You know, the the world in murder is based off of the real world. So all of the practices of raising animals that we show in issue 1, and now we're going to show in future issues, all of those people really do and are not the exception. I'm not going to show, some kind of weird thing that, probably never happens. It's all stuff that, happens every day. And I just want to show people what's happening and have characters that people are going to care about, and feel that sensation of like, oh, I really don't want that animal to die.
yeah, because that's kind of what you get in this book is very much a strong sympathy towards the animals. And I didn't plan it like this, but here we are having this discussion the day before Thanksgiving.
Right.
And that seems to be one of the things that a lot of the animal rights activists are kind of tackling is, a lot of the turkeys being killed and things like that. And I'll tell you, we got some Gardein, turkey cutlets and stuff in the freezer right now. Stuff tastes just like turkey, but I'm telling you, it's not turkey. Plant-based. It's amazing what they can do with those plant items now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We had some fish the other night that I was like, this is fish. This has got to be fish. But it wasn't fish.
My sister is actually the one that converted Brittany and I. We like to say she vegangelized us.
Yeah.
She, she's if a fake meat is too convincing, it freaks her out. She won't even eat it.
I see that a lot.
Yeah, she doesn't like the. I don't know if you've had the Impossible Burger.
Yeah, they'll actually give the look of bleeding if you press them.
She does, that's too much for her. But actually, I made it yesterday. I found a recipe for it's a seitan steak. And so I made a bunch of cutlets yesterday, and we'll fry them up tomorrow.
Talking about our one of our sponsors, your local Satanist, one of our good friends, Lindley, who has kind of a local vegan, she distributes food to people, does orders at the local farmers markets and stuff like that. And she had like a massive amount of, like roasts and things like that, all plant-based. And she sold out. As far as I know, last I saw, she was completely sold out for Thanksgiving. She had like a massive, order that could be filled, and they were all gone like a week ago. So veganism is alive and well in Chattanooga. and seems to be growing elsewhere. So that's a plus on us. But like I said, I don't want to be too preachy. We typically don't do that on the channel, but the day before Thanksgiving, it's one of the things that near and dear to my heart. But anyway, anything else before we wrap up? Like we'll wrap, and then after the interview is over, I'll say goodbyes to you, and then we'll call it a night. But is there anything else that you'd like to tell everybody? You have the open floor.
Well, thanks everybody for being on the chat, and keep an eye out for the Kickstarter for issue 2. We'll also have a Kickstarter for Brittany's comic book, Karma, and
you got me interested about that. Like, I'll tell you what, send us the links to that, and we will post them on the Facebook page, on the Instagram, and all the various ones.
Well, thank you very much.
Because you have made fans out of Untitled Nerd Network.
Wow.
And you're fun to talk to. That's a plus.
Hey, nerd to nerd.
Yeah. Most definitely. Anything else before we wrap?
No, I don't think so. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yep. Thanksgiving begins in just under 2 hours. Here. Well, you still have a few more hours over on the West Coast. So.
All right.
But also, good to know, shout out to everybody over in California. Most of our people, we have fans all over. So, we were actually, like, whenever we were really heavy on YouTube, we'll be back on YouTube around January. But we have people like in Greece and all kinds of stuff. Emiliano, yay. I'm assuming that means in regards to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's not in regards to Faces of Death.
Oh, Amber says it was an amazing interview. Thanks, Matthew.
Well, thank you, Amber.
Amber's one of our other admins. And I do want to remind everybody that we will be doing let's see, what all we have. I want to be sure I'm not missing anything for our future programming. We'll be doing a backstage interview Friday night with Departure, the Journey tribute band. That'll probably be either really late Friday night or first thing Saturday morning. We'll be posting that. That won't be a live interview. That'll be pre-recorded. I'm going to try. My birthday is Saturday, and I'm hoping that I can do some live streaming, play some video games. So watch out for that over the weekend. And then also remember our Walking Dead, Spoiling Dead recap Sunday night around 10 o'clock, right after the credits roll on the Walking Dead mid-season finale. So that will be it. Matthew, thank you for coming on. We absolutely love your book, and can't wait to see what else you have in store for us over the next several months. So anyway, that'll be it. I'm Lonnie with Untitled Nerd Network, brought to you by Infinity Flux and your local Satanist, both out of the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. And this has been our interview with murder writer Matthew Loisel. Everybody have a good rest of the weekend. Everybody have a safe, happy, maybe animal-free Thanksgiving.